What was your contribution to this sport that we get to enjoy so much?
Okay, the first thing is, I created the Octagon, and UFC, the first UFC was called Wild Promotions, and they were going to use it in a wooden pit. And if you go on my page, my website, it's on octagonnation.com. If you go on octagonnation.com, you can see and click on the different areas. You can see the proof. It has the media package I'm going to discuss. It has the proof. It has Kazja's Kumite, the Cage of Rage. It has the flyer that they were going to use a wooden pit. But what it is I did a show in February 1993. I did it in 1993 on the 21st of February. And I pulled it off. I got the investors to use an octagon. They want to use a boxing ring, but I said we got to make a presence. You have to do it. We have to do it in an octagon cage.
And the show, before you continue, the show was local in the South Bay, right?
This one was in Irvine.
In Irvine.
The first show was in Irvine. And Art Davey, Jorge, and Gracie attended the show. And that's where they were going to use a wooden pit, but once they saw the octagon, they used an octagon in November. So my show was February, their show was November, so go figure who used the octagon. But it came off, they did the octagon, they did the UFC, and the first UFC by Wild Promotions, they're ready to give up. They actually threw the cage in a trash can, in a dumpster. And SEG, the guys who shot the film and produced it, said, no, we want to maybe do in the future. So they pulled the cage out. And then later on, SEG bought WOW. Art Davey convinced everybody, all the people that were investors of WOW, to sell to SEG. But Art Davey got the job, okay? And then SEG was doing their shows. And they were having a real hard time. John McCain came in and said it was this is like human cockfighting, okay? And he got 50 states and they all pulled it off. Well, this is around 1997, 98, and they were going bankrupt, They were only on the internet. And I didn't want to give up on this, and I says, I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to do it the right way and try to get positive media and positive news and bring it up slowly, okay? So around 1997, 98, I had a venue up the street, 2 blocks from my house. It's called Dancing Waters. And
now this is on the city of San Pedro?
San Pedro, California.
San Pedro.
Right. So I says, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a show at Dancing Waters. And that was to pull off the first show. And if I didn't pull off that first show, I don't believe the UFC would be here today. It would have been under, it would have been gone. But I pulled off the first show. I went up there and I talked to the people. But at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday night, I get a call from the facility, and they says, Vice Squad came in there and they says, you can't do the show. We're going to pull your license. And
so this was Sunday night. Your shows usually were every
first Monday of every month, and this is the first one. I wasn't going to do it the first Monday but this is the first show. I had to pull this off.
Right. So the night before,
I get a call, and they said that the venue got scared. They didn't want to do the show. And I got up, I went up there and talked to them, and I go, it's not full contact. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to do no head strikes, okay? That's not full contact. We're going to do kicking and punching the body. We'll do submission. I just want to bring the sport out so people see how exciting it is, even if you don't even strike the head, it's exciting.
Yeah.
It's exciting. So next morning I get up, but at that time, my sister used to be a boyfriend to David Gaskin, the Los Angeles Police Department. He's the chief of police. I contacted him, and I told him my story. I'm going to do a light contact tournament. It's not going to be no head strikes. We'll kick and punch the body. And like in Kyokushinkai karate, they kick and punch as hard as they can, but it's still considered light contact. And then we're going to do submission. You have jiu-jitsu and you have judo, and they do submission. So I'm putting them together, and we're going to do a show. So he contacted his people, and I was dealing with the Vice Squad, and they didn't want this to pull off. I don't know if the athletic commission or whoever was behind it pushing them to shut me down. But at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I don't give up. Everybody said, come on, let's just go home. And I go, no, we're gonna stay here, my crew. And there's all my students, and they said, okay, so at 3 o'clock, they said, okay, you can set up. So
What time was the show
It
scheduled?
was the scheduled show started at 6 o'clock.
So 3 hours before the show.
So at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, we said, hey, let's go do it. So everybody got together. We put the Octagon up. We told everybody, wait. I was signing the fighters up. You know, they show up. It's like the old style, like karate tournaments I used to go to. You show up that day, and we pair you up that day. So they would all show up, and I paired them up at weight class. We weighed them in, and I got the whole card together. And we may have started an hour later or so. We started at 7 o'clock. But I pulled it off. I mean, it was such a good feeling. If I didn't pull that show off, who knows? So after I pulled that show off, I said, hey, I'm going to do this the first Monday of every month. You know, and it was a challenge every month. I'd get a cease and desist letter. I'd get this, I'd get that, but I knew it wasn't illegal. So,
and during that time, as you're putting the show together, what are you doing for work? Like, what do you do for work?
I had a studio, but then mostly I focused on this. And then once I got my casual card on the docks, I closed the studio down, focused on this, and I was a casual. So
Nice.
I was a casual trying to pull the show off.
Wow.
And I pulled the show off. I didn't have no money. What I did is I printed up the tickets. I sold the tickets and used the money for the advertisement. We didn't have social media then.
You're right.
You know, so, you know, and there's word of mouth mostly. And
You created quite a buzz in that San Pedro area.
oh, so I got it on, and I go, you know what? Let me go to Cox Cable and me talk to them and see if they want to put it on the public access. And I came up to Cox Cable, and that's why I wanted to do this interview with you guys, because this is a whole thing with the South Bay. So I contacted Carlos from Cox Cable, and I said, hey, you want to come down and film my show? And, you know, the UFC was on the internet back then. John McCain got it shut down. They're only on the internet. No one was watching it.
Yeah, I remember you had to go get a tape, a video cassette,
Right.
tell your friend, oh, you have it? Okay, we're renting it. Hey, come over. We're going to watch the last one. It was very difficult.
Yeah, you couldn't see it. So I give my credit to Cox Cable for taking the chance, and they came down and filmed my show. Well, they didn't just film it that one time. They put that show on. It ran the whole week on their public access. Everybody was watching it. And right then, I was really lucky that this girl, Tracy Johnson, she wrote for the LA Times. And she wrote for the LA Times, and she calls me up, and she goes, hey, can I come down and interview and do your shows? And this is scary. You know, you don't know if they're going to do a good article or a bad article. I'll be ruined after I let her come in. But by me letting her come in, she came down, and I said I gave her a front row seat, gave her tacos when she was watching the show, and she really enjoyed it. Well, Tracy Johnson and Cox Cable is what made this. And that if you go to octagonnation.com, if you're watching this video right now, go to octagonnation.com, go on there and click on Cage Combat Media. That's the media package. That media package shows all the news I got. I was on Channel 2, Channel 7, Channel 4, all that. So if you go there, you'll see that. But Tracy Johnson did that article. Once that article came out, it was on the front page of the LA Times. And I got this call from a guy named Howard Schultz. He was a big-time producer at that time. Howard Schultz calls me and he says, hey, can you come up to my office? I want to meet you. So I went up to his office and I met him. And he's seen that LA Times article and he goes, yeah, I want to probably do something with you, but I want to see your show. So I had the show the following Monday. Well, I'm getting these cease and desist letters. I even get a guy knocking on my door from the Athletic Commission when I'm eating dinner on Sunday with my family saying if I do my show tomorrow, they're going to shut me down and arrest me. And I said, hey, if I'm doing something illegal, then arrest me. But I wasn't.
So you were a pioneer in this sport, and you were creating something that really didn't exist because it mirrored what the UFC was doing, but
Right.
that was considered already illegal. So this was you creating something that was more positive, more of a sport, correct?
Well, you got to take something slow. You bring it out. Okay, you first do no head strikes, then you do open hand strikes, which I did next, and then you go do closed fist. You got to bring it up slow to the public, than rather have it no holds barred. Okay,
Right.
so when I met Howard Schultz, I told him to come down and do my interview to the show. Well, that Tracy Johnson article, I wish I can see. Tracy Johnson, if you're out there, I mean, I'd like to get a hold of you and do a story on how you made this sport legal by helping me. And so that article got all the news to see it. Howard Schultz didn't see this yet. Okay, so when they seen it, when that next show I came on, Channel 2 wanted to be there, Channel 7, Channel 11, Channel 13. Every single news station came to my next show. Every single newspaper came to my next show. Daily Breeze came to my next show. LA Times, I mean, all the other newspapers all came to my next show. And you see that media package, you'll see all the proof. Everything I say, or I tell you, or everything I say, I have paperwork, I have documentation. All that. So I have it all right here. This is, I mean, just real quick, this is that LA Times article. So this was very important. So I have everything. And
Kept all your receipts.
I keep all my receipts, I keep all my documentations, and I have everything. So here's what happens. Every single news came down the next day and they filmed it. And Howard Schultz seen this and he goes, now it's on all the media. I better do something with this guy, okay? Right. So he says, hey, Kazja, I want you to meet Sean Perry from Endeavor. Well, if you don't know who Endeavor is the biggest agency in Hollywood, okay? And if it wasn't for this media package, Endeavor never got involved, okay? Endeavor only got involved is because of this media package, okay? Because this is 1998. So from 1993 to 1998, no one wanted to touch this. No one wanted to touch this.
Yeah, in fact, this was at the time where the UFC was actually losing money, right?
They were losing money. They couldn't get on pay-per-view. They weren't allowing it because of John McCain. And they only on the internet. But here I'm on Cox Cable in Palos Verdes and San Pedro and South Bay every single night.
You made it more attractive. You made it more sexy in a sense.
Well, I made it more, and it was insane. I mean, and you can see in those videos, people loved it. And every single news was perfect. It was perfect news coverage, okay? So I go, okay, I'd like to meet Sean Perry. So I went out to Sean Perry with that media package that I have from all the positive news, and I played it in his office. And he says, whoa, man, I want to get you on Channel 13. I want to blow this up, but I got to talk to WWE first. I got to talk to Vince McMahon, and because they handle all they am. But you notice now, Endeavor owns WWE. They own UFC. Now they're doing Zuffa Boxing. Endeavor owns everything, right? So Sean Perry says, yeah. So he talks to WWE, and then I get a shun. Like I guess they didn't want to do this. There's going to be competition with them. Okay. This is 1998. So I'm still pushing 1999, stuff like that.
Your shows continue.
So I wrote the rules with Rob Lynch. I mean, I helped write the rules. There's other people in it, but I was on the phone calls with Rob Lynch at 4:30 in the morning. And I was putting the rules through with Rob Lynch of the California State Athletic Commission. And he asked me, hey, Kazja, should we call this no holds barred or should we call it mixed martial arts? And I said, we should call it MMA. I go, you have to call it MMA because MMA will get the general public to accept it and it will get the sponsors. You need sponsors to make money. That's where you make your money. So he goes, okay, we're going to call it MMA. And then in the rules, the first rules, I had Octagon in the rules. And he says, hey, can we just put cage so everybody can use the cage and be any type of cage? Okay? And I said, yeah, this is any type of cage. I didn't care. You can do a cage or you can use an octagon. No problem. So
this is as the rules are being written.
This isn't the rules. This is 2000. So now we're jumping to 2000.
Got you. So this is after that meeting, right? With Howard Schultz. Is that
after Howard Schultz, and then it was slowed down. Endeavor slowed down, but then they told me I had pay-per-view with Global Entertainment. They wanted to do it.
Okay.
And I had Endeavor.
So, like any entrepreneur, right? The show must go on. Yes, they gave you some interest, but they didn't move on it. So you're continuing to push forward.
So I'm still continuing pushing forward. So what I had to do, I says, okay, I got to make this sport legal, and I got to get it. I will say, well, anyway. So November of 2000, they accepted me as the first license for the California State Athletic Commission for amateur MMA and pro MMA. Now, it went through Office of Administrative Law. I have all the proof and the documentations, and in the future I can show that to you. But I have all the proof. It went through Office of Administrative Law, and it got approved. So they were going to give me the first license in 2000, okay, for, to do MMA. I even get a letter from John McCain in November that I showed you today at my office. As John McCain in November. That letter came in November. In November of 2000, I get a letter from him, and now I'm going to get the rules. But there was a catch. There was a catch on all this stuff. What they were doing, they didn't want MMA. They wanted jiu-jitsu. They wanted to regulate jiu-jitsu. They banned it in 2000, okay? And then they were keeping it secret. They were trying to send it through legislature. So they let tournaments go on, but, it was banned. Okay.
So they wanted to regulate it for what purpose? Like if they regulated the sport, what would that mean for
jiu-jitsu?
For jiu-jitsu.
Okay. What happened was, jiu-jitsu, you have 1,200 competitors at a tournament. MMA, you have 8. Or maybe 10 or 16 or whatever competitors. Now, only them will pay a license fee. If they got jiu-jitsu, they would get the licensing from 1,200 competitors. Judges, referees, timekeepers, studios. All studios would have to go through the Department of Consumer Affairs to get a license to teach, So they came to me and they said,
so that would have meant that a lot of these dojos and that
it wouldn't have exploded like it is right now today because of the government would be controlling it.
Got it. And you were fighting for it because that was an art that was part of the mixed martial art. You wanted all the arts to be to kind of see what art would be above
right. So the fighting.
So
the jiu-jitsu is, I love jiu-jitsu so much. I loved it. It was exciting just to watch the submission because the guys fighting in my tournaments, it was exciting for me because I knew it. So when it happened was they said to me, hey, we'll give the first license and the only license for a year if you sign off on jiu-jitsu. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. Okay? So the day I went there, I figured it all out. If I would have said, okay, I will take my license for that day, and it's on television, it's on YouTube, you can see me getting the first license and saying, no, I'm not going to do it. That was December of 2000. So that happened. And I saved jiu-jitsu right then from getting regulated. But they weren't giving up until 2006. So right then, I had pay-per-view and I had Endeavor, right? And they said, you got to get Vegas to approve it, okay? And this was around 2000 and 2001.
So just for our viewers' sake, so all this is going on, all this battle is with the California Athletic Commission.
Nevada State Athletic Commission.
And then in order for it to be legal, they said, hey, you got to go up to the big boys. Usually California follows suit, right? What Nevada does, their decisions, California usually follows suit.
Yeah,
right?
So I had the first license. I could have had the first license. I had the first license, first accepted license for martial arts. So, but my pay-per-view told me, Endeavor told me, you got to get Nevada to approve it, okay? I could have said, no, I quit. I'm not going to do this no more. I'm not going to go do it. But no, hey, man, I look at all those times I put, everything I suffered, everything I did, everything I fought for. No one knows this story. There's maybe a few people, the ones that fought in my show, one of the best fighters that fought in my show that really knows this is Antonio McKee. Antonio McKee and AJ. AJ and Antonio McKee lived at my property on 228th Street where we had an Octagon and we had that's where I came up with the idea Ultimate Fighter that I gave to Sean Perry of Endeavor. And
This is all happening while
All the
you're
two-
trying to get the approval from the Nevada Athletic Commission. So
Right.
you go. So what was that like? So when you do go to the
Okay,
Athletic
so here's this is insane. So you talked before. I mean, I can jump off, but I told you I want to stay focused on one pattern. The whole thing about South Bay making it, Cox Cable and Tracy Johnson. So here now it's around 2001, and I called up the athletic commission. I talked to Kirk Hendricks. I talked to Mark Radner, and I says, "Hey, I'm going to come out there, and you're going to have to arrest me. I'm going to do my show." Okay.
Who were some of the members on there on the Athletic Commission at the time of your meeting?
Well, the guy who Zuffa, the head of Zuffa on the UFC, who bought the athletic, bought the UFC, was Fertitta. He was on the commission, and I don't know was him was holding it back. I don't know what anybody else was holding it back.
So as you're going to try to apply and make the sport legal in Nevada, Fertitta was one of the athletic
He was
commissioners.
an athletic commissioner.
And then at the same time, the UFC is not doing good. It's struggling. They're losing a lot of money. It's not legal.
And they were trying to get Nevada to approve it too. SAG was trying to get it approved too, but they were having a thing. But me, I don't give up.
Got it.
Everybody, if I just created the Octagon, someone took this idea and ran with it, and then they did all the hard work. Hey, no, I did the hard work. I was at the meetings every month. I was in Nevada. I was in California. I was talking to Rob Litch. I was talking to Kirk Hendricks. I was talking to Mark Ratner. I was on the phone every day. And back then, we didn't have I had the internet. I was faxing stuff to everybody, okay? So here's what happens. Now we're jumping to 2001, so I have to get it approved. So I drove out to Hard Rock Cafe, right? I'm going to do my show at Hard Rock Cafe. So I talked to somebody. I go, I need to talk to somebody. I want to put an event here. I was went into the bar. I was talking to a guy at the bartender, and I go, who can I talk to? And I go, I have a tape. I want to show them, and I want to do my shows here. And he goes, yeah, give me that tape. Well, that bartender, I heard, gave that tape to John Lewis, who was his instructor. John Lewis gave that tape to Dana White. Dana White was studying from John Lewis. That tape, you see, if you guys see on that, if you go on my website, you see that tape, every single news station, it was positive news, okay? So that tape got in the hands of Fertitta. But at the same time, you seen the letters today at my office. It was in 2001. They said they received my tapes. The Athletic Commission received my tapes of the positive news. So all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, I get a call from Endeavor UFC. They said, hey, we're going to make the sport legal. Can you come out and help with the rules? Okay. So what happened was, I had pay-per-view. I had all that stuff. But when I was going to go to that meeting, Kirk Hendricks, okay, he's head of gaming right now. He was head of gaming then, but he later on got employed by UFC. So he told me, don't say you have pay-per-view and we'll give you a license. And when I was at that meeting, he goes, we're not going to give out no new license that day. There's no new licenses going to be given out that day, and we're just going to put the rules through. So I was there on the rules, giving my viewpoints, what should be, everybody giving their viewpoints. All of a sudden, the hotel, I don't know, I forgot what it was Bellagio or MGM or whatever, they stood up and says, hey, can the UFC do a pay-per-view event on my license at my event? And so that's how they got their first pay-per-view, right? So I came back. I can't compete with them. A pro show. I can do an amateur show, but I can't compete with them. So I come back home. MMA is approved. Amateur and pro is approved in 2000. I have all the proof, all the documents. You don't give a receipt or take money from somebody, get them fingerprint if it's not approved. So it's all approved. Soon as they got approved in 2001 by the Nevada State Athletic Commission, they banned it in California. It's illegal. You can't do it. And then I'm pushing. And then I found out, and I get an email from Mamona Garcia stating that judo, and I have the email. It says judo, jiu-jitsu, and wrestling is illegal, and it's full contact.
Now, who's Armando Garcia?
He was the head of the California State Athletic Commission
At the time. So you get an email from him saying that
judo, jiu-jitsu, and stuff is full contact, right? And you can't not. They were doing the tournaments, but what they're doing is they're sneaking it through legislature, and I knew it, trying to get it to be regulated.
got it.
So Armando Garcia, I got him to come down to San Pedro. So he came down meet at San Pedro in 2005, and he saw my documentation. His eyes looked like Marty Feldman when he saw my stuff. His eyes were like, it was insane. So I was presenting, it was at the San Pedro Brewing Company, and I was presenting showing him the first license, showing my cage, showing him all the stuff.
You were the first to use the Octagon, correct?
First one. I told you, like, at the beginning. And if you go on Kazja's Kumite on my OctagonNation.com, you'll see all the proof. You'll see me building the cage. You'll see all that. Okay? But it's great I created the Octagon. You know, I wasn't trying to hoard it or nothing. I created the Octagon. I had it to be a purpose. He said, now they're entering the circle. No. Now they're entering the square. No. Now they're entering the Octagon. It had a purpose. I had to sell it. And when I sold it to my investors, they say, hey, we won't be able to see nobody. I go by any single school playground, and I bet you can see every single kid on that playground. And that's how I sold it. Well, my first cage, it wasn't vinyl coated. It was a fence. And when we were first shooting on it and testing it, it reflected. So we spray painted that whole cage black, flat black. And that's how it happened. So
now at this point, so now that they've banned it and Armando Garcia is telling you, they're basically holding you back from moving on with your shows.
Well, they're holding everything back. They weren't going to approve it until they got the approval of jiu-jitsu being regulated. That's what they wanted. They didn't want MMA. And if California sets all the rules, once it goes in California, then every other state follows.
Got it.
So if I would have said, okay, hey, because all the fighters, all the promoters back then, they say, hey, Kazja, give up jiu-jitsu. What they do for you? Give them up, man. And come on, let's get MMA approved. And I go, no, I'm not going to sell out. I'm not going to sell out judo and jiu-jitsu. They want to regulate judo. They want to regulate jiu-jitsu. And they want to regulate wrestling. All that. You know, and I go, well, why is jiu-jitsu, if judo's okay, why is jiu-jitsu, jiu-jitsu is longer on the ground than judo. And I sent them an old book on showing the Nawaza. The ground fighting was in the judo. I mean, I did my homework. I mean, I pushed, and I faxed all this stuff. So right now we're dealing with Armando Garcia. So Armando Garcia went back right then. They gave up on trying to regulate jiu-jitsu, and they're going to put the rules through. Okay, now this is 2006, okay? And, let me go back to 2001. This is a very important story. So in 2001, when I got it approved in Nevada, okay, UFC, before that, they bought the UFC for $2 million. Well, we got it approved in Nevada, okay?
So let's real quick. So UFC was bought for $2 million
from SEG by Zuffa.
From Zuffa, okay.
Fertitta.
The Fertitta was still on the athletic commission?
No, he resigned right before he bought it.
So he's off.
Yeah, he's off. He bought it. He left the UFC. He left. He knew they're going to make it legal. So he leaves. He buys the UFC. Okay, they make it legal. But you can imagine this. This is the most important part to what I did. And UFC would not be here today. And there will be no Octagon at the White House right now. Okay, so what happened right then, when that happened, when I got that Octagon, when I got that approved in 2001, I get a call, came home, okay, it's approved. And I get a call from Mark Ratner and Kirk Hendricks. Okay, they gave me a call and they said, hey, Kazja, the Nevada State Athletic Commission and the government only wants to use a boxing ring. They're not going to approve the Octagon cage. Could you imagine that? Wow. Can you imagine spending $2 million for the UFC just for that Octagon cage? Then all of a sudden, you spend $2 million and you have to use a boxing ring? Now, if I was a jerk, and just say, so what? No, I wanted to get my dream to come true. So right then I sent, you know how I do it? I sent all my letters. I wrote up a documentation, the reason why I created the Octagon. I created it so he couldn't get pinned in the corner. If it was square, you get pinned in the corner. Octagon. I didn't know how to create a circle cage then. I mean, so I said Octagon. So you can't get pinned in the corner. The fencing was for the safety of the fans, and it's for the safety of the fighter. You know, they won't get thrown out. They won't hurt a fan, or the fighter won't get hurt. But it don't. Also, the cage made it where, like, Pride was using a boxing ring in Japan, but that cage saved them, and then you don't have to restart the fight. The fight can keep on continuing. So I sent all that documentation to Nevada. Nevada says, whoa, okay. They approved it. They call me up and they go, hey, thank you, Kareem. Thank you for approving the Octagon. Whoa. I get a thank you? Okay. So then that happens. And then now it's banned in California. We couldn't do anything, you know. You couldn't do it. But I still did my shows. You know, I still did mine, but I couldn't get a big investor.
And in the meantime, the UFC's having their shows as well.
They're using their shows and they're doing their shows. And now what happens is they're doing their shows, and UFC was $45 million in debt, they said. I mean, this is all written up. The Zuffa, they're about ready to give up. Okay? So what happened was when I went to Sean Perry, you know, when we were dealing and talking to each other, I said, I have this house. You know, I have fighters that live there. Anthony McKee lived there with his son. They have other fighters would come in and stay there and stuff like that, and they would train.
Who were some of the fighters that came to your
property? Well, at Neutral Grounds, at the front office, we had the only cage back then, and so Randy Couture came there and trained before he fought Vitor Belfort, and we taught him how to work the cage, how to punch through the guard, and that's how he beat Vitor Belfort. And that one day was kind of funny. I was there. We're sitting in the house, and I'm hearing this bam, bam. So I run out, and this Crow Cop kicking the heavy bag. And I was so scared, man, he would bring that roof down. So he's there. Rico Rodriguez is there training. Fabian Iha, Bo Hirschberger was the jiu-jitsu guy. We had all these guys coming there. You know,
Rokoff he was pretty big in Pride.
He was big in Pride, and he was big. Yeah, he was big. So and then what happened was, this is back. I'm jumping around a little bit, but this is our property. And then 1998, I mean, there was no place. If you were a sambo player or a jiu-jitsu guy, so there was really no tournaments. You had to be a jiu-jitsu guy to compete in a jiu-jitsu tournament. You had to be a judo guy to compete in a judo tournament. So we held like a no-gi tournament, and we had go-karts guy came down there, wrestlers came, and we did it was like the first like a no-gi tournament at our property, you know, and it was exciting. You know, I told my partner, this is exciting, you know what I mean? So we did that, and we had that property. Well, I contacted Sean Perry of Endeavor, and I said, hey, you know, I got this property. You know, we don't need to go through the athletic, and we don't have to do nothing, and we do it, and the fighters will fight in my cage, and we'll film it like this. Well, that idea, they used it. They had the idea. UFC said they'll pay. Zuffa said they'll pay for that show. I mean, I'll pay for doing that show. That Endeavor wouldn't have to pay for it. So they got it on Spike TV. Now, if that didn't get on Spike TV, UFC would have just went boom. That's what made it.
The Ultimate Fighter show.
The Ultimate Fighter show. Ultimate Fighters got the general public to see it. You know, it was good, it was exciting, it was clean, and it got it going. And the people started seeing it, and then now they got their pay-per-view buys. They can advertise on this weekly series and get the pay-per-view buys and people, and that's what happened.
So as this is happening, you're basically opening the doors for others to basically benefit. Like the UFC, they came in, they're seeing a little bit of what you've done. You're creating the rules. You're helping write the rules in order to make the sport legal.
Right.
And now, but in California, it wasn't legal. So you're still being held back as they're now moving on with something that you helped establish and create and were a pioneer at.
Right.
Even with what you're mentioning about the property, the Ultimate Fighter concept, that was huge. I remember that. That was it's attractive. It's behind the scenes. It's reality TV.
Right.
Right. So why is it that we are now just hearing about this? Kazja? I mean, it's been a long time. I get it. And, you know, like, I had a completely different idea of how the UFC started prior to meeting you. And one thing I do appreciate is that everything that you've told me so far, you back it up with documentation, with your receipts. And, so what were there any challenges like to try to get the story out? Because, I mean, not very many people know.
Well, see, nowadays you got now people are believing podcasts and people are believing we got social media now. They didn't expect this when they stopped all this stuff, and I did what they did. They didn't expect it's going to have social media. They didn't expect me to remember everything. I can remember my childhood. I can remember what I did when I was in second grade, third grade. I remember all that. And I have it all here. And I told the story maybe 1,000 times. And it's the same story. If you heard my story, it's constantly going. Okay?
So early on in those shows, who were some of the names, who were some of the fighters that would go to your shows in San Pedro?
Well, yeah.
Because I'm trying to wrap my head around.
Well, my shows usually everybody came to my shows. Hoist Gracie came to my show. Tito Ortiz came to my show. Tito Ortiz fought my show. Chuck Liddell fought my show. Rico Rodriguez fought my show. Rampage fought my show. All those guys fought in our show. Me and that's my Ryan. We had the shows, and they fought. All those guys fought, and then they'd come to my show. Joe Rogan even came to my show in Los Angeles. Bruce Buffer was an announcer at my show when it was all going under.
So this was prior to the UFC's success. These individuals are coming to the show and seeing.
This was like this is the time before even Zuffa bought it.
What year was this? 2001?
2000. Well, 2000, before then, and then after when my shows were started going, I was still doing them until 2006 before it became illegal, right? So I just got, but then when I was doing my shows, but here's what it is. In 2001, I told you right now, we covered the part, how I got the Octagon approved. They were going to use a boxing ring. So 2006, Armando Garcia gives up. I don't know if we covered this yet. Let me know if I did. It said, I went to the Athletic Commission. I was sitting there.
California Athletic Commission.
This is 2006, and I was there. Pride was there. Everybody was there with me, and we're trying to get this approved. And they said, okay, we're going to approve the sport, but we're only going to allow to use the Octagon. And I said, wait. I created the Octagon. I do the shows in the Octagon. I went with Rob Lynch. We wrote the rules, but we didn't put Octagon. We put cage in the rules. And I have the proof of the paperwork that shows exactly the rules were 2000. Okay? So they said, what? And I says, yes. And I go, but anyways, okay, you got to I can't compete with the UFC. I can't compete with them, but Pride can. And he was sitting right behind me. So right when I told them this, I said, listen, okay, in 1998, you did a Russian mixed martial arts. You held it at the Forum. It was called Draka. It's kickboxing and judo with throws and takedowns, and you allowed the boxing ring. You allow San Shao, which is a Chinese martial arts, which is up at Chung Li does up in Sacramento, up by where you guys are at, and they do kickboxing and throws and takedowns, and they do it in the boxing ring. Okay, so you allow that. You got to allow Pride to use a boxing ring. You can't just limit it to an octagon cage. So all the commissioners said we agreed it, and they said, okay, we're going to allow a boxing ring. Pride jumps up and taps me on the shoulder. Thank you, Kazja, because I was talking to him on the phone a lot of times. He goes, hey, Kazja, how can you do your show? I'll do it with you. And he goes, no, but it has to be approved. It's not like you. I'm putting up millions. So I said, so he thanked me. Everything got approved. There's going to be a boxing ring. Everything was going to go. So I was excited. Pride was excited. And I go home. Finally, I get word through the grapevine. So I'm always checking things, what's going on. No one checks on the Athletic Commission. No one checks their minutes. And no one checks none of that stuff except for me. So I find out there's going to be another meeting 2 weeks another meeting 2 weeks later. Well, now Kirk Hendricks, who was the Attorney General for Nevada, the gaming, he now works for the UFC. Mark Nackner works for the UFC. Everybody now works for Zuffa, okay? So they scheduled another meeting 2 weeks later. And I find out about it, and I go to it. Right when I walked in the meeting was all new commissioners, all different commissioners. And it says, hey, God, we got to get this thing through. If we approve the boxing ring, we're going to have to change the rules. We're going to have to change it. They didn't have to do that. They're going to approve it in one day. They're the commission. So they said, we're only going to allow you to use an octagon cage. You can't use a boxing ring. Well, all the promoters that were doing shows on Indian reservations and other places, they were using different type of cages. Some of them were doing pentagon, some were doing hexagon cages. They had to all change their cages, build new cages, $30,000 or more, $100,000. They had to build new cages in an octagon. And then they had to pay Zuffa a licensing fee to do a cage. So that's another $3,500 out of the pocket. That was another pressure on them. But if they use my octagon cage, I mean, they would get hassles and stuff like that. I'd rent my cage out, but most of the time they had to go through all this. So, I mean, this is just a minor point to this whole story. The whole thing is, but the main point of this is that South Bay, it's all, what I say is destiny. How I met you, everything goes in the right time. Maybe this is the right time. Now the octagon's going to be used at the White House on Trump's birthday. I mean, now some people says, whoa, now let me look at this. And now you have social media and you have podcasts, you have people. And now if anybody wants to sit down with me, put me and Joe Rogan in one room. Put me with Joe Rogan, with Kirk Hendricks, with Mark Ratner, with anybody else in the same room, and let's discuss this. But they won't touch this.
See, and that's one of the things that for our viewers to really understand what this means is that you approve certain things. You were an instrumental person in helping, like, for example, Pride, right, get their ring approved. And then once they approved it, then they were no longer... They bought them, right?
Right? Okay, so, yeah, that's a good one. I told you this story a long time ago. So I'm fighting. So once they shut it down, you know how I get. Facts. Call. I was calling everybody, pushing that boxing ring, telling them this and this. That's illegal what they're doing. Here's the rules, okay? Finally, they approved the boxing ring in California for Pride. Right when they got approved, UFC bought Pride.
So they basically paid him because they realized that they'd be a competitor. I mean, it was a good business move. And the point of that is that so Pride was doing their shows very similar to what you were trying to do. They were holding you back. Whoever they is, the commission was holding you back, right, from creating your shows, stopping you in a sense from moving forward. And in the meantime, other people have shows that are probably better or where the UFC sees that they're more of a competition, they're getting compensated to get out of the way. Were you ever compensated anything for what you did, Greg?
No one would touch me. No one. You can say, he's the guy he won't sell out. We can't buy Kazja. Even when I was a dispatcher, me when I was a dispatcher down the docks, the lashers, everybody loved me as a dispatcher because there's there's black and white. There's no gray with me. Oh, okay, this guy, I'll give my friend this job. No, I go by the book, by everything. So, I wouldn't sell out judo. If I would have sold that out. But, here's what it is. A few people know me and they recognize it, I mean, I'll go to a jiu-jitsu tournament. They don't know what really happened and what went on. They don't know the guy who was behind us, making it, giving up if I gave up, just imagine, okay, sorry about this. Okay, just imagine if I gave up and just said, hey, forget these jiu-jitsu and judo guys, forget these wrestling guys, go ahead, give me the first license for a year, man, I'll blow up. I could have done it. Maybe I could have blown up. I could have been, something. But also to keep me down, I mean, when they made it legal in 2006, even though MMA was approved both amateur and professional in 2000. Both of them were approved. They only approved professional in 2006. I'm not going to touch a professional show with the Athletic Commission. I mean, there's no way. So When they approved it, they said, no amateur. And I was going to Armando Garcia at the meetings. I'm going, hey, man, what's this? Oh, okay, well, don't do it. I kept on doing my shows. They wouldn't touch me, but I would do I wouldn't break the law. I'd do open hand strikes, and it still was exciting, And I still kept it, and I kept on. And finally, 2010, they made amateur MMA legal. So, all these guys out there, when I go to these shows, I just went to a show this weekend put on by Spar Star. My girl, she's a California state champion, and she's a California state champion and a Spar Star champion, okay? And I went to the show, and I walk in there, and I see the cage, I see the octagon, I see the fighters, I see all this stuff. No one, it's 2025, no one knows who I am. I walk around, no one knows who was the one. That's my creation. Now you see cages everywhere, but no one realizes what I went through and who I had to sell, and the nights of not sleeping, the nights of getting threatened, the nights of cease and desist letters. No one, this is. But, I thank, destiny where everything happens. I thank I was in the South Bay. I thank Cox Cable. I thank Tracy Johnson's. I thank everybody, you especially. Now you're making a statement that no one wants to touch this. There's a few people who touch this. But when I start speaking about this, they don't listen to this. What they do is they try to throw me off my pattern. They try to throw me off by talking about something else that gets me off the situation.
I appreciate that because you sitting with me and trusting me. The reason why I'm sitting with you, Kazja, is because for one, I'm a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a father. I'm a community member of this great South Bay community that we have, right? I really love our community. And when I got wind of your story, I got wind of what you had gone through and how instrumental you were to forming the UFC and to make it legal, to make the UFC legal. That's what we're talking about. I just couldn't believe it, quite frankly. And then at first, and I just kept digging. I kept doing my homework. I kept reading everything that I could get my hands on. You started sending me a lot of the documentation. And although right now we're sitting down and it's a story, you have every single receipt to prove it, to back it up with dates, names that were at your show. And to me, it just feels like just as a human being, we need to make this wrong right, because I feel personally that you are owed a lot for people that made billions, and all that money, everything that money represents, right? It represents protection, it represents help, it represents so many things that you could do with it. I'm sure that your family could use some of that money. I'm sure that you would have been probably better off or lived a little bit better life. Not that you're in need of money, you had a really good job, but still, this is your baby in a sense. So knowing that, it makes me feel some type of way. I hope that the people that are seeing this, it moves you to push this story. We'd like to get some answers for you. I would love for you to sit down with Joe Rogan. He has just a little bit more successful podcast than we do. But speaking of him, one thing that really I kind of like to contrast things, right? So one thing that came to my mind when you mentioned his name was that he early on spoke out about something that he felt was wrong, meaning in comedy. So he brought to light that Carlos Mencia, a very popular comedian back then, was stealing people's jokes, right? And so he really pushed them. No, these jokes you're telling, that somebody else was saying them, right? So how ironic now that he's a part of an organization that really, they kind of used your knowledge. They used some of the things that you did for the rules and regulations and the cage, the Octagon, and now he's staying very quiet because he's a part of that, right? He's a part of the organization. They're very successful. And we're not trying to put them down. What we would like, and I think when we talked about this prior, is inclusion, right? You've been excluded from this. Nobody knows you and what you did for the UFC. So I would like to be a part of the person of the including part. Would you agree to that?
That's it. It's I always say it's the right time. Like me, the most important thing in my life is my family. Okay, Who knows if I would have got this way back then? You know, I wouldn't have my family. You know what I mean? It may have threw me off the track and stuff like that. Everything's right, but money and everything. That's why I don't sell out. I go, you can give me $10 million and I won't sell my family. I go, that's the most important thing. My grandkids and my daughter and my wife. That's the most important thing to me. It gets me sentimental, but my family is, my family, my friends. That's the most important thing in life. It's not monetary money, but no one wants to touch this story. When I was doing my shows, they took a lot of my players. Brian Ortega fought his first fight at my show. And he even was on the UFC tape, and they drove by the property. He says, yeah, I fought right there at that place, and it was like underground or whatever, but he fought in my show on 228th Street. That's what his first shows was. And that's when the Dahui, they were working with Brian Ortega, and I knew the Dahui then. I grew up with the Lursons, and I grew up with all those guys in Carson and stuff like that, and they brought Brian Ortega to my show. And then there was Erica Montoya, one of my best students, and she's on that. If you go that tape, you see her in my show. It's on Channel 34. You go to OctagonNation.com, Cage Combat Media. It was Erica Montoya. She was 14 years old when she fought in my show. She was one of the best in the world back in the day, but they weren't talent women. She fought in Japan. She fought in Brazil. She fought everything, and I trained Erica Montoya, and then she was really top. Well, guess what? UFC sees that. They know Erica Montoya. They see my tapes. They seen Erica Montoya speaking Spanish. They hired Erica Montoya for the Mexican broadcast. That was another one of my people. All those guys were like Carl Parisian. He used a tape of my fight at one of my shows for his first fight of the UFC, showing him to do the UFC. But no one wants to touch me because then everything starts coming out, and I never forget, and I don't sell out. You see what I mean? And only a small, like you now, I gave you everything, showed you everything. You've seen all the proof. And I save it all. I have all of that. And whatever I say or whatever I speak or whatever I tell you, I have documentation. I can, boom, there's that. There's the first license. There's this, there's that. And then it backs up. I'm not a guy just coming out of the woodwork saying all this stuff, but everything I say is documented. It's proof. I have the proof.
No, and that's one of the things that really stood out to me is that you have everything down to the card. Sean Perry of Endeavor, right, with Harold Schultz.
I have his card. I have Howard Schultz signature.
You've kept everything, and it's time. I think it's time that we perhaps include you in the UFC history, in the MMA history, and not just that. In a perfect world, I wanted to ask you this: in a perfect world, Kazja, what would you want for the UFC to do? What would you want? How can I put this? Because it seems like you've had all these different people and entities kind of use you as a springboard to get to the road that they're trying to get to, right? You are a very instrumental part. If it wasn't for you, I don't think that the UFC would exist. Who knows what jiu-jitsu would be like? It's a global sport. So you took something that was local in our South Bay community and it transitioned into something global. And the players that are the owners and all the people, the big weights, the big heavyweights needed you to write these rules. They needed you to back up and approve this octagon. So all these things they needed you. Now that they didn't need you, everybody left, right?
Everybody gave up, and it's just my way, right? It's just I if I have something in my mind, if you screw me, you're screwed. I'll go and I'll go and I'll go and I'll not stop, But I never gave up. But you don't have much. What I did for the sport, there's no recognition. There's no mainstream media going to come and touch this. Okay? Endeavor's very powerful. I had writers come to me and they, and then I started talking about Endeavor. I can't take your thing. I had producers, a big producer from Brazil, Fabiano Iho. I brought him down to my store, the store you saw today. He brought him down there, and I showed him all my documentation and all my proof. He goes, man, I want to do a documentary on you, right? But he's with CAA. And all of a sudden, and then he left, and he's working with Endeavor. So after I gave him all that story, he says he won't touch it now because now he's managed by Endeavor. So I've lost him as a documentary guy, okay? So, I mean,
Is that what you would want? Like, I guess to rectify what's been done to you. What would you want?
well, you know what it is? Truth, like right now, here I told my daughter, I tell her everything, and she really understands everything, and she's seen everything I went through. And I told her before I turned 70, I'm 69 right now. I said before I turn 70, I'm going to put all this out. And then now, well, you got AI, you got ChatGPT. Now I'm putting it in ChatGPT. The first book I want to do is Jiu-Jitsu Banned. I want to tell the true story about jiu-jitsu. I mean, I walk into a jiu-jitsu tournament, I pay to get in. They don't know who I am. And they don't realize it. Okay, if it was regulated, the only people that that could afford to put a tournament on is they have to pay all these guys. Everybody has to be probably on workman's compensation and all this stuff. Everything has to be by the book, and only the big promoters will be able to put a tournament. You wouldn't be having tournaments every single weekend. You would never. It'd be illegal to do a tournament in your school. It'd be illegal to do any kind of submission tournament. Okay? They would be in control of everything. And only the big players, the corporate organizations, now that UFC now has their own jiu-jitsu organization. And now they're opening up UFC jiu-jitsu gyms. Could you imagine if this was regulated? There will be only UFC jiu-jitsu gyms. There will be only UFC jiu-jitsu tournaments because they're the only ones that could afford this. It wasn't for me. I mean, I hate to say but you needed that. I mean, you needed that. Just off the word, you needed that asshole. You needed that guy who's going to push. And when I used to speak at the meetings, when I spoke in Nevada, I heard him on the side. No, let him speak. Let him speak. In the back, let him get it out. He's going to get this shit approved. His talking is going to don't be quiet him down. And I hear him in the background, let him speak. And it was me pushing, faxing everybody, faxing the letters. And no one knows this. Everybody thinks this and this. Everybody thinks, okay, they created the Octagon. Art Davian, he didn't create the Octagon. Okay, they were going to use a wooden pit, and there's proof on my page, octagonnation.com. Go under Kazja's Kumite, and you'll see the proof. I have the first drawing is 1992. And if you read that Cage of Rage part, there's a Cage of Rage part, it says that I was working on it 2 years before. So 1990, I had this idea to use an Octagon. If they didn't walk into my tournament that day, the first UFC be wooden pit. You imagine it wouldn't have sold. And you couldn't imagine if it was going to be in a boxing ring. I mean, Pride was doing it in Japan in a boxing ring way before the UFC. I mean, there was shoot fighting going on in Japan. And it didn't get the flare up as that, until the Octagon got into play. So, I mean, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of suffering. And then what do I get out of it? All I got right now is the story. And the story is, I mean, I appreciate you, but it's destiny, how we met and how we get it. You're the first one that's jumping on this. And the first one that probably to be the only person I really would like to interview with is because everybody else, when I start telling the story, they jump it off. They try to throw it off. They don't want to hear it in order, in place. And this is just a small part of it. You know the whole story. I mean, you got my emails, my texts, you've seen the whole story, and no one else has seen it all. And finally, this may be the first, but who knows? You may be the Tracy Johnson of me. Someone out there in the South Bay, they'll see this, and they'll see what I'm working on. You'll see like all the different things. I got that octagonnation.com, but I have other things that I'm working on. But I don't have the drive to push it, but I have the creativity. I'm a creator now, and I did the Mighty Martial Art Manahoney Surf Warriors. I wrote that book. It's on Amazon. And then you see all my characters, right? You see that. You see Matt Rat. the story about Matt Rat. Well, Matt Rat, if you see in my documentations, it was written to me in 2001. They sent it has Matt Rat. Matt Rat has been around since Tap Out. The same day, the same time that Tap Out trademarked Tap Out, I trademarked Matt Rat. The same time, exactly. If you go on trademark, you took Matt Rat, you see Tap Out, same time. And then
I saw Tap Out on their logo in one of your videos of the show. Were they were the first? How did that?
yeah, Charles, they came when I did my first show. He was living out of his car, working out of his car. He had Tap Out, and I had, and he asked me, "Hey, can I set my banners up on your show?" I said, "Yeah." I didn't charge him. I wanted him. I helped him out, and I told him what to do, and I told him, gave him some ideas. He goes, "I got all these different." I go, "No, Charles, just put Tap Out on the shirt. That's it. People understand you." So what happened was the Tap Out story, and he sold his first T-shirt. Well, he comes to me, and this was
He sold his first T-shirt at one of your
he
shows.
sold one of his. My show is where he sold. I was the only one doing shows then. He may have went to a jiu-jitsu tournament, but his T-shirt sold. I was the first MMA and everything like that to bring out Tap Out into the MMA market. And he even told me. And then, so what happened was, in 2005, I'm the only one doing shows, okay? And Charles was doing his shows, and he's blowing up, and all of that because of me, right? And, me getting them going. And so all of a sudden he comes to me and says, "Hey, Kazja," he goes, "Hey, can you do a pilot in 2 weeks? I need to do a pilot in 2 weeks." I didn't know what it was. He goes, if you do a show for me in 2 weeks, and I'll blow you up, man. We'll blow you up. So me, sure, all right, let's do it, all right? So 2 weeks, I got Jake Shields to fight. Jake Shields fought Toby Amata. I had Maverick going to fight Shannon the Cannon. I sent you that video. You can look on there, you see it. It's 2005 Cage Combat, and it shows the show. I got everybody had to wear Tap Out gear. I told all the fighters, you have to wear Tap Out. I'm doing this for Charles because it's going to blow me up, right? So everybody's wearing Tap Out gear. It was a blowout, man. Great show. Maximum Cage Fighting was there. They came to me. They were going to shoot some part of their movie. And these guys came to me, and no one believed that I got them to, they used my Octagon. Well, UFC was writing them letters saying, "Hey, you can't use the Octagon, you got to pay us a license fee." I go, "You tell them you're using Kazja's cage." Once they told them, and I have the paperwork on this, once they told them, Maximum Cage Fighting says that they told them it was my cage, they backed off. Okay, so they would shut them down. They would have charged them. But Maximum Cage Fighting was there that day. Everybody was there that day. And at the end of the show, Charles go, "Hey, Kazja, can we interview you?" And I said, "Yeah, you can interview me." So I sat down, and everybody's around there, all the production crew, and they were shooting this pilot. And he goes, "Can you explain it?" And I go, "Well, yeah, Charles sold his first T-shirt. He walked down my stairs at Cage Combat, sold his shirt. I let him put his banners up like this. I go, "This is the Octagon. This is the original Octagon. It's not vinyl coated. It's real. I originated the Octagon. I did this and did that, and now I'm doing these shows." And once I said that, after the interview, they all started clapping. Yeah. And I was going, something's strange. Well, they could probably did. Here's what happened is they take that tape, and I think that's when they went to CAA. They're supposed to have a meeting with CAA. They're going to take over their Tap Out line. They show them that we're going to do that. They show this to Zuffa. You imagine getting a tape of doing a show at Kazja's Cage Combat, the Octagon originator, this like this, and they take them. All of a sudden, Zuffa buys Tap Out. They end up with Ferraris, Lamborghinis, whatever. Then he comes to me, and I go, "Hey, Charles, let's go, man. Let's blow this up." He goes, "Hey, Kazja, I'm sorry. I can't do nothing with you no more." I mean, "What do you mean you can't do nothing anymore?" He goes, "Well, UFC owns us now, so I can't blow your show up." So he does his reality show covering all the other shows, and when he couldn't do nothing with me. So instead of me signing a contract, I always trusted people and stuff like that. That's the way I am. I trust you on your word. You shake your hand, but every person like that, and that was a setback,
Yeah, Yeah, it seems like along the way, it's very familiar. It's like they take little bits and pieces and then they make it themselves, right? It originated with you, and now they form something that's gone global.
It's gone global, and then you see my mat rat logo, and they say, hey, oh, that's the same design as there's Tap Out. I go, no, that's Tap Out. They got it from the Everlast. Everlast has the bow tie design. I have the mat rat. So I had it trademarked back then. And by me, instead of me focusing on my mat rat, I focus on, say, getting jiu-jitsu not regulated, getting MMA approved. All my focus was on that. I couldn't focus on a clothing line. So finally now I trademarked Mat Rat. Now it's a registered trademark with me. And Mat Rat is for the fighter, it's for the guy, the wrestler, it's for the jiu-jitsu guy, it's for the judo guy, it's for the MMA, for anybody who spends 24/7 on the mat. You're a mat rat. So the main concept, I mean, I have that line, but I don't want to push it like I had the strength back in the day. I mean, I'm looking for someone that's really strong that may want to license mat rat. I mean, I have fighters right now that will wear mat rat just to wear it because they know me. You know, that mat rat is like, it's been here since the beginning, you know, and now I have it and I trademarked it, making sure no one can steal it. Now I can talk about it. Now I'm trying to push Mat Rat. I'm trying to push that. And I teach. I'm teaching again. I'm back teaching. I teach on the weekends. I have a kids class. I have an adults class. I teach on Saturdays and Sundays. And I give respect to my guy, Brian Mendez. I mean, this was like when I turned 60, right? And I was on the docks, and he came to me, hey, Kazja, you want to teach MMA at my place? And I said, because he knew about me in San Pedro, and I said, yeah, you know. And for 20 years, I stopped. I was worrying about everything else, and I started teaching again. He brought me in. And then I started my jiu-jitsu right then. I said, that's another goal. I mean, I knew jiu-jitsu and stuff from guys training and stuff like that, but I said, I'm going to focus on this. So from 60 to 68, 8 years, I went every day, every other day with Brian Mendez to do jiu-jitsu, and now I got my black belt in jiu-jitsu. My love for the sport, I said, I got to get a black belt in that. So it's my 10th black belt. So I got black belts in 10 systems. I study from the best. I study from Chuck Norris. I study from Aaron Norris. I study from Doug Wong. I was the only white guy in the Black Karate Federation. I got my third-degree black belt from Steve Sanders. There's so much history I can go into, but is that I pursued it. I lived this art. I lived this sport, you know. And finally now I want to get Mat Rat out. I want to try to get the Manahuni out, you know. I even trademarked. I had a restaurant one time getting it going. It's called Tap Out Taco, you know. But I had problems with. They said you have an injunction, and the big investors were scared, you know. But now I got everything in place. Everything's in place on my page, and now I'm just looking for the right person, the right people I can line myself up, and the person I can trust, because everybody's promised me and stuff like that, and you know you see what I went through. Yeah.
An hour, a little over an hour, is not enough time to cover everything that you've gone through. This is literally just a summary of what it is, and this is hopefully a springboard. My goal, my hope is that somebody, like you said, somebody sees this and really make this right by you, right? To put you wherever it's appropriate to put you, and as far as being a pioneer in the sport, helping the sport grow, making the sport legal that we enjoy so much. Nobody really thinks about those the early days, right? And that's spoken like a true entrepreneur, because an entrepreneur, you put blood, sweat, and tears in your ideas, in your business, and whatever it is that you find value in that you want to get behind, right? So for you, coming from a fighting background, 10 black belts, you've lived it, breathed it, you know, you sleep it. You are the person most qualified to be able to make the type of claims that you've made in regards to why was it that you were the one that was making these rules, because you've been fighting your whole life.
Yeah, and a lot of people say that, you know, they got all these black belts. You know, if you see my house, my room, I have the certificates. I have everything I have all the documentations. And, you know, I'm not bragging. I lived in Korea for 2 years. My whole life has been the martial arts, but my whole life has been, you know, everything's falling into place. Okay, like I told you that one story, if you know, when I was in Korea, in Kunsan, Korea, and I sent that documentation to you, you know, and I almost got 10 years for Leavenworth for that incident, and I have the documentation for that, and I sent it to you, and. I was training in Korea, you know, as a fireman in the Air Force. And so we worked one day on, one day off. So the day off, I'd go to Kukswa in the morning. I'd go to Taekwondo in the afternoon. I'd go to Shaolin Kung Fu, and I was on the boxing team. And then I'd go to the Rock Marine. I sneak on the Rock Marine base and train with the Kuksawon guys there. So I was always training in Korea. So, you know, I'm going downtown in Kunsan, Korea one time. And if you want the proof, I have the proof. I have the pop, and I showed you it, and it's the letter of reprimand. And I was on the base, and the guy came up, and they wanted me to go downtown, go off base, go home, and I go, no, I'm not going home. And so he goes, that's a lawful order. I want you to go home. Well, I young, and flipped him off, and you know, he grabs me by the wrist on the stairs, so I throw him down the stairs, and then I go after him, and the cop puts a belly club, and I break, and I help him, and I flip him, and then I got in my stance, right? Well, there's 6 MPs. Now, MPs downtown, they were known to take the guys around the corner, beat them up and stuff like that, drunk, but I just got through training. And one went to get reinforcements, one went to get on the radio, and then the 4 came at me. So, but before they came at me, what saved me was I said, put your belly clubs away and I'll come in. And they came at me. So I hit, and it says in there, it says, kick Sergeant so-and-so in the head, did this, and it says exactly what I did. And I dove and rolled, and I go, I ain't going no more. I don't got a passport. So they take me down, and they arrest me, and then I go back to base, and then I talked to my friend, which is a cop, and they go, hey, guess what? That story made it in the Stars and Stripes. And everybody's calling the base commander, and the base commander was an ex-SP security police. They said, oh, one guy beats up 4 of your military police. What is your military police? So he wanted to make an example of me. And they said, hey, Kazja, my buddy Bruce Polkowitz, who now was the chief of police in New Jersey, he told me, he goes, hey, they want to give you 10 years for Leavenworth. I go, this is 1979. So you imagine if I would have got, there would be no Octagon, there would be none of this. So I had a witness downtown that heard me say, put your belly clubs away and I'll come in. By me saying that, I had the right to resist and everything like this. So they said, will you take a letter of reprimand? Which that is like a ticket. They charge you a fine and stuff like that. But, you know, I got out of the service. I got out as honorable discharge. I got out in my paperwork as an E4. And I survived that. But, you know, just imagine if I didn't beat that, who knows who knows what'll be here right now. I mean, everything is a purpose. I'm supposed to survive. I'm supposed to push this. I'm supposed to come up with these ideas. I'm supposed to fight the athletic commission. It was me that had to go in and fight these guys. Yeah.
Man, we could go. We could go.
I can go forever. I know. That's why we need to do a documentary. Anybody out there want to do a documentary or write a book? You know, contact South Bay Podcast. They'll get a hold of me, and you know, who knows? We may be able to get a documentary, or maybe we probably get a movie like Mark Kerr's movie right now just going out. I just went to called Smashing Machine. And Smashing Machine, I just saw that. You imagine this documentary, this one out there, you know, and
you can really tell the story. Go put the visuals behind it. This is a conversation, and it's a long overdue conversation. I can understand why some of the people that you've mentioned who have an association with the UFC, the fighters, wouldn't basically step up to the plate for you and you know, make this tell your story, include you in it, include you in the history. You were there. There's no way around you being there. You have the paperwork. You were there. I'm very grateful that we were able to sit down for a little bit and talk. One of the things that I would like is hopefully our audience can take a little bit of this and share it. Please share this episode with as many people as we possibly can. I hope that our South Bay comes together for you, Kazja. It's been long overdue. I know that you've kept a lot inside, and I'm glad that you were able to share it with some of us. And don't stop fighting, man. I'm not going to stop fighting. I'm going to be fighting with you.
All right. Thank you.
That's our show, guys.